All right, good morning, friends. It's Tuesday, and looks like it's up to be a good day again today. It's going to be cold where I live. I mean, not really, but it is for me. I'm drinking out of my Belize cup just to remind myself that there are places where it's nice and warm. But anyway, I hope you're going to do well today. Hope things are good for you. I think we finally on the downhill slide of moving our church facility and all of that stuff and putting it in storage and getting ready for a new season of life. So uh, looking forward to that and what God has for us. So appreciate all you praying and all that's going on in that arena. Hope again, like I say, hope things are good for you. And so I'd like to hear from you. So let me know if you need anything. You can always private message me if you got any questions about life or whatever that I can help you with. Um, I'd love to do that. It's kind of what I do. So anyway, let's jump into the book of James today. We're in chapter 5. We're almost through. We should finish up at the end of this week, and we'll be launching into a new book study. But we're in a section where James just finished really chastising the wealthy wicked, those who tend to oppress, and those who abuse the excess of wealth that God has given to them. And so yesterday we looked at at how to handle excess wealth, and we saw so much of that. But today we deal with how do we respond to the difficulties of life as it relates to being somewhat oppressed. Now, you and me may not feel so oppressed these days, although there are minor irritations that come our way. But there are difficult seasons in life, and so I want to address that because James does. And so he used the word in verse 7, therefore. Now, anytime we see that word therefore, what do? We stop and ask what it's there for. And so it harkens back to the passage just before it. And so if you remember that, he spoke of the evil, wicked people and how they've abused the others and how they've taken advantage of them, and that the witness is crying out against them and all of those things. And he ends verse 6 by saying, "You have condemned and put to death the righteous people." Speaking of the wicked, wealthy, and how they've in some sense kind of sentenced the righteous to a death, so to speak. And he says he does not resist you. Now that's an encouragement to remind us, you and me, of how we should respond. So now, in light of that, he says, therefore. So now he's shifting gears, having talked about those people, some that were in the church. He's now shifting gears to talk about those of us who are on the receiving end of that kind of thing. And so, listen, the wicked, wealthy, and powerful always seek to oppress. Governments do that. We're seeing that now in Haiti and so many other countries where that's going on. We see the uptick of that here, even in America. The government is always seeking to take something from us, whether it be more taxes or freedoms and all of that. And they're just because they have the ability to impose these things on us, they do. And not just because we're Christ followers, although that is true in some degree in certain areas. It's just that the government does that. Bosses do that. They tend to always take advantage of those under them. That's why the scripture speaks of what it means to be a good boss. Paul does that in so many of his passages in books, Ephesians and Colossians. Jesus does in his teachings. You can find it all the way through how bosses take advantage of people. Then there's just mob rule that takes advantage. They're just people who are power hungry. And seek to dominate. And so you and me may find ourselves, whether it's singularly, whether there's one individual in our life that tends to always kind of create havoc in our life, stress, difficult people, right? We could even stretch this out to difficult people, although James is speaking of the context of those who lord it over you, so to speak, their wealth, and who make you pay on those behalfs. And so the question is raised is, how do we react to that? How do we react to people whether it be government or bosses or just individuals in our life that are irritants but have somewhat measure of control over us. How do we respond to that? And in this section, it's really, really good about how we do that. So let's look at it. He says, therefore, be patient. Now, there's several words for patience in the scriptures. He mentioned that in the beginning, right? In James chapter 1, he speaks a little bit about patience and things like that. This is an interesting word. It's macrothumio, which is a compound word, obviously, macrothumio. So macro, large, right? That's where we get the word macro, where we talk about just large, right? And then there's thumeo, which means tempered. So basically, he's saying, therefore, be long-tempered, as opposed to short-tempered, right? We all know someone who's short-tempered, short-fused. They're just ready to blow at any moment. He's saying, therefore, you don't be ready to blow, and don't be ready to just fight and be angry about government coming at us or our boss mistreating us. Therefore, you be long-tempered. Be slow to anger. That's really what he's saying. So we don't resist. We don't fight back, not with worldly measures anyway. I'm often mindful of Paul's prayer when he said, Alexander the coppersmith has done me much harm. May the Lord repay him in kind. I love that prayer. I probably love it more than I should. I prayed that several times. So-and-so's done me much harm. May the Lord repay them in kind. But we do fight like that, but we don't grovel and we don't fight like the world does. And so he says, hey, listen, I want you to be patient. Now, the Proverbs are full of that. Proverbs 15, verse 18 says, a hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but the slow to anger calms dispute. Listen, there's not a lot of good stuff that happens when we just have a short fuse and we just blow up at people. It may make us feel good for a season, but nothing good happens. You want to diffuse the situation. You want to create peace in a situation. Long-temperedness is the way. And then Proverbs 16:32, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. There's something powerful about not letting your emotions overtake you. And so the proverb says, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. And he who rules his spirit, he who can control his anger, will be able to capture a city. And so I find those two proverbs fairly helpful in this conversation that we're having. So how do we handle people who are coming our way and they're wicked, they're unrighteous, and they just seem to be heaping opposition in our life, keeping us down, so to speak, if you will. I don't mean to sound like a victim. I'm just saying that happens. Then how do we respond to that? And I got 7 things that the scriptures speak of through here. And so we're just going to rattle them through. And the first one is we focus on the Lord's return. What does he say? Therefore, be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. What's he saying there? Because the Lord is coming. Be patient until the coming of the Lord. What he's saying is, hey, listen, this isn't all there is. This is a great reminder, because there's going to be times we feel like, man, it is just terrible. I love what happens when life gets hard for me. I do tend to kind of put my eye towards Jordan's stormy banks, as the old hymn said, and begin to think, man, I'm about ready to go to heaven. It's just easier there, right? And this is what he's saying. Hard times and difficult people make us mindful that this isn't all there is. Paul said it like this: these momentary light afflictions, and by those afflictions he was speaking of people, but he says is creating an eternal weight of glory in my life. My mom used to say this statement: this too shall pass. And so we're just mindful that the Lord is coming back. How do we handle all this difficulty that's coming? I mean, our world's crazy right now, right? And it feels like everybody wants a piece of us in some sense. And so we have to remind ourselves, when life gets as crazy as it is, that the Lord's coming back. That's step one. How do we create this long suffering, this long temperedness? We do that. And the second thing is that we learn to wait. We learn to wait. He gives us the illustration of the farmer. The farmer waits for the precious produce of the soil, being patient about it until he gets the early and the late rains. Now, the early and late rains are They're seasonal for us too, right? There's the fall where we plant and we and there's this early fall rain, and then there's the spring rains, and so we wait for a farmer. If you've ever done that, I've done a little farming. Glad to have been rid of that these days, but we used to do a little bit of that. You'd plant, and you could do everything you wanted to, weed and everything else, but you just had to wait and hope that rain would come, that the soil would be rich enough to create the crop that you wanted. And so there's this waiting game. There's a movie, I don't know how old it is. Tammy and I watched it several years ago, called Faith Like Potatoes. Great story. But I didn't realize this about potatoes. But when you plant them, they don't show anything coming out of the ground. There's nothing like that says, oh, look, there's something. Like I go out in the mornings to my little tomato plant. I can pop off some cherry tomatoes, and you can see when these things begin to look like they're coming. But potatoes don't. You just plant, you wait your season of time, and then you just dig up and hope that there are potatoes there. And this is what he's talking about. We learn to just wait. We trust that God is going to do his thing, that God is going to meet our needs, that God is going to make all things right. And so there's just this, I'm going to wait. How do I handle difficult people? I'm going to wait. I'm just going to wait for the Lord to do what he does. What choice do we have? We just wait on the Lord, right? And so, one, I recognize, hey, the Lord's coming back. That's a good motivator into how I handle just the difficulty of life. The second thing is I begin to learn what it means to wait and trust that while I can't see God working, God is always working, right? God is for me. The eyes of the Lord move to and fro about the earth, the scripture says, that he may strongly support those whose hearts are fully his. God was working in the background in Joseph's life, though Joseph maybe couldn't see it. God had made a promise to Joseph of what was coming. And so what you see is that there was this ebb and flow, and there was difficulty. And Joseph just learned to wait. He learned to wait in the cistern when his brothers had thrown him in the well. He learned to wait in the prison. He just learned to wait. And it's a powerful concept. Just wait. The third thing that we see is that we strengthen our hearts. Look what he says in verse 8. He says, you too be patient, strengthening your heart. So he goes back to the word patient. Hey, you too be long tempered. And he says, strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. And so there's a reminder, hey, the coming of the Lord is near. What I hear him saying is, hey, buck up, right? There are times I have to tell myself that. There are times that I'm trying to get something done, whether it's working out to improve myself and physically, and I'm thinking, man, I don't know. And sometimes you just have to go, hey, you know what? Buck up, get out there and do the right thing. Get out there and exercise. You just got to do it. So I got to strengthen my heart. I can't just go by my feelings. Man, we've been moving the church, and I walk up there and I'm thinking, oh man, there's so much stuff. And at some point you just have to go, you know what? Buck up. Let's just get through the day. Let's just get through this. Let's do what needs to be done. I remember back in my younger days when we had a lot less money than we do now, and cars would break down, and you just want to sit down and you don't want to cry because you didn't have any money to fix it, but you knew you had to, and you knew you had to figure it out. This was before YouTube. You just had to hunker down and figure out how to fix it because you couldn't afford to pay somebody, and so you'd go talk to old men who knew how to do it, and you'd kind of make notes, and you'd come back and you would do it. What you would have to do is it can get discouraging. And this is what he's saying here. Strengthen your heart. Do whatever it takes. Buck up. Put your big boy pants on. Let's play the game. Right? And so this is what he's saying. Strengthening your hearts. Why? For the coming of the Lord is near. And he's going to speak about the coming of the Lord 3 times. It is the greatest motivator to just understand how to live life now by keeping an eye on what's coming. And so this is listen, difficulties come. This world is not getting a lot better. In fact, it's probably going to start imploding even worse. I mean, we're in a season right now in America where who knows what's going to happen. And so we're just every day like some new crazy thing comes up. So what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to keep my eye on the fact that this isn't my home. Thank God I've got another place, and I'm going to focus on the Lord's return. I'm going to learn to just wait on him, and what comes. I can't stop it. I'm just whatever comes, I'm going to learn to wait on him. I'm going to strengthen my own heart. I'm not going to be discouraged, and I'm not going to complain. This is what he says next, verse 9. Do not complain, brethren, against one another. Why? So that you yourselves may not be judged. Listen, we don't get a day off of gossip and backbiting. So it means that when difficulty comes, I don't have the privilege of going, hey, well, enough's enough. And now I'm just going to start telling the whole world my troubles. Stop it. You know, Paul told the Philippians, remember when we studied that you and I might do all things without grumbling and disputing, that we may shine as lights among the wicked and perverse generation. There's this aspect of just stop complaining. Just don't complain. Nothing good comes from complaining. We just trust in the Lord. These are the steps. These are so rich and good. And then he reminds us, number 5, that judgment is coming, so that you yourselves may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing right at the door. Listen, I want to complain and point my fingers at those who are oppressing me and those who are coming against me, and the evil and the wicked and all of that. But at the same time, the Lord is also judging. He's judging them, and he's judging my reaction to them. And so it's kind of a healthy reminder the judge is coming, right? We're all going to stand before him, and I'm going to have to give an excuse for why I wanted to whine and complain instead of trusting in the sovereign God who is over all and in all and is for me. And so these are the things that I find very convicting but encouraging at the same time. So number 6, he says, at verse 10, as an example, brethren, of suffering and patience, right? Those two things, it's just part of life. Take the prophets who spoke the name of the Lord. We count those blessed who endured. So he's saying, hey, listen, look at the example of others who have endured through that stuff, right? Now, that's not like misery loves company. Let me find somebody who's got it worse, right? I mean, we tend to want to do that. But it's just that you see that. I'm always encouraged when I think of Corrie ten Boom and all that they went through and the persecution that took place, and her losing her sister and her father and her family and watching others die, and the encouragement that she just bucked up. She just endured. And so by her example, I find, well, look, man, she went through some terrible stuff. Surely we can do that as well. I think of the persecuted church. And what's happening among the martyrs in the Christian faith today. And I'm encouraged by that. I was encouraged, I think I've shared with you, my friend Trelochin, who was beaten in India for his faith, and my first encounter with him greatly encouraged my heart to not let the petty things of life get in the way. But I appreciate the prophets. I appreciate those who've gone before us. Hebrews 11 is a great passage in that. And then the last one that I leave you with is that remember who God is. You have heard the endurance of Job and have seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings, that the Lord is full of compassion and is merciful. Listen, God doesn't take a day off from that. The world's going to come at us, and they may be not compassionate and they may not be merciful, but he always is. And so if we quit focusing on the enemy, quit focusing on the wicked, the unrighteousness of them, and we just focus on the Lord, where we don't see compassion from them, we're going to find compassion from the Lord. Where we don't seek mercy from them, we're going to find mercy from the Lord. And that's the word today that I had for you out of James. Convicting stuff, isn't it? But listen, hard times are coming. You're either in some hard times, you're about to go into one, or you're coming out of one. But we're always in that cycle of just suffering and needing patience and endurance. And so those 7 steps are rich for us today. Love you guys. Can't wait to meet you in the morning and do this again. Have a great day.